props, well, this props ID, that's fine. On page delete. In fact, I'll leave that back in there. On page delete. Now, can you spot a problem here? We don't actually have this ID. What is this ID actually? We're inside the page component, but all we're getting, let's delete these. All we're getting here is, I didn't actually want to delete those. I wanted to add them here. Something like that. Okay. We can take these binds off now. Okay, so all we're getting in here are the properties to handle these events. What? All we're getting here are the properties to handle these events, right? We're not getting the page stuff yet. What we want to do is in here we want to say something like, well, let's give every property of page to this component. How do we do that? We could do something like ID, page ID, and so forth. We could do something like page, but then we'd have to say this props page ID. Alternatively, we can use the spread operator in ES6 and do something like page, which means every property of the page object is now a property on this page component. So when we get down to the page thing here, we can say, well, this is actually the page we want to delete. In fact, we can see what that ID is here. So when we refresh this, dun, 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 there we go. Time to delete page 3. Because ID is now a property on the page component because we're using the spread operator. Does that make sense? Let me know in chat. Okay. Let's delete this on-click thing. Okay, so we have actions that the list item can do when we click edit and when we click delete. So Ian Danforth, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, asks why we need to bind to this. Because it let me try and see if I can remember. When we give these function handlers here, when this class is created, JavaScript doesn't actually support traditional inheritance-based classes. This gets converted to something along the lines of function page.prototype dot render is function, and then page prototype constructor is page. This is kind of what JavaScript is doing in the background, okay? The class keyword is just syntactic sugar on top of that. And the way that these things are added, they're not actually bound. These aren't bound to an instance of page. We would still have to say something like inside this function, we would still have to say this render is this render bind this. Because without this, they're still unbound in the code that JavaScript is doing in the background. So basically, we have access to this inside here, right? Inside, oh my gosh, highlight. Inside here, this resolves to an instance of the class. But the moment we reference a function, it's not bound to that class immediately. We still have to bind it. I don't know why it's not bound to that class immediately, but anyway. I mean, we see it here, but the way that this executes in a different context. The thing that fires off the click events, for example, like if we go down to page list item, the thing that fires off these click events isn't firing them off in the same in this context. I mean, this means a different thing. So we bind it so that it doesn't refer to the A link or that A component that gets executed. No, it's chilled. I've never actually had to verbalize that, so I hope I did it justice. Anyway, it's not bound to the class is the gist of it. I should have led with that. Why didn't I lead with that? Okay, we're getting all the components here. So in page, when we execute this, we have the actual ID. And here, this time to delete a page is all the way up at page admin. All the way up at page admin, time to delete a page. If we do the ID property in here, and we echo it out here, we'll see this again. It'll say, time to delete a page, space 3. Oh, or 5. If we clicked on the 3 one, we'd see that. Okay, so it's executing this because by the time it gets to this point, we actually want to do the delete. Now, how do we do that? Well, I don't know right now. Let's think about this. Okay. Well, maybe we can do something like if we're connected to a WebSocket, we pass that as a property to this component. Maybe we could say something like this: props socket emit delete. Maybe we could do something like that. Or maybe this is the point where we say this props backend delete ID, and we have the backend handle how that works. Maybe the backend does AJAX or does socket communication to get that to delete. We're not really fussed about that right now, but it would be well, maybe we should make a fake backend to do this. Let's make a fake backend. Okay, var backend. Or okay, I'm just going to move this stuff in here so that we can have sort of a fake way of doing this. No shortcuts! Okay. Class backend, all, and that returns an array. Okay. Delete with ID, and that says this deleted push ID. And then what this all does is it actually returns this dot map, this dot filter, page ID, this deleted index of page ID is -1. Wow. Again, I have to rebind this because this deleted wouldn't mean anything without it. In fact, I can do this handy lambda expression. Wow. That's really cool. This is really cool, by the way, being able to do these lambda expressions. I have yet to see if it even works in this context, but anyway. Delete. Okay, pages. Let's do backend. Backend. Wow, if I've lost you at this point, I'm sorry. I'm just frantically trying to get something to work before we run out of time. Okay, so I've created a new backend class, just as an example. And so you would put things like AJAX stuff within this class or WebSocket communication within this class. For now, I've just got an all method which returns a static array and a delete method which, let me make that array, constructor, this deleted is blank array. Okay, I'll do the filter thing now. Okay, so we've got this backend class. It's got a constructor which creates a deleted array, which is empty. Okay, then our all method just returns our hard-coded pages. Our deleted method adds the ID of the page we want to delete to that empty array that we had in the constructor. And now, instead of actually removing the item from this array, because I don't really want to do that right now, because it's fake, all I'm doing is saying return the original array of hard-coded values, but leave out anything but only return items in this array where their ID hasn't been added to that deleted array. Does that make sense? So we have our function that would return everything unless one of those pages' IDs is in the deleted array. And instead of actually deleting something, the delete function just adds that ID to the array. Yes? Good? Okay. Filter on an array expects a function. And each item is run through that function. And if the return value of that function is true, the item is included. And if the return value is false, the item is excluded. So here we're saying, for each page in this array, have a function where page is available as a parameter of that function. And then we say, if